Dawson woke before dawn, as she did most mornings, her small apartment in Dayton, Ohio, quiet except for the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the soft breathing of her 7-year-old son. She slipped out of bed, careful not to wake him, and tied her worn sneakers. The morning air was crisp as she stepped onto the balcony, glancing at the faint glow of the city lights fading into the dawn. Took a deep breath, savoring the calm before the storm of her day. Breakfast, work, errands, and the endless balancing act of single motherhood. Shuffled into the kitchen, hair sticking up and eyes still heavy with sleep. "Mom, is breakfast ready?" he mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. Smiled, ruffling his hair, and poured a bowl of cereal. "Almost. Get your backpack, I'll get your lunch ready." She watched him fumble with his school bag, organizing books and notebooks, unaware that the woman guiding him through these ordinary routines was anything but ordinary. Had a past she rarely mentioned, a past that had demanded courage, precision, and nerves of steel. A past that had made her a decorated F-22 pilot in the United States Air Force. In the kitchen, the smell of coffee filled the air as packed a simple lunch for, a sandwich, an apple, and a small packet of cookies. "Do you have your homework?" she asked, double-checking his folder. Nodded, clutching it like a small shield of responsibility. "Mom, do you think I'll do okay on the math quiz today?" His innocence made her heart ache slightly. Had faced life-or-death situations at supersonic speeds in the skis above foreign deserts, yet here, she fretted over a 7-year-old's math quiz. She bent down and hugged him. "Of course, you've got this. Just focus like we practiced." The morning routine continued, dressing, brushing teeth, and a flurry of last-minute errands. His mind drifted as she glanced at the clock. Today wasn't just any day. It was the day she would fly to Washington, D.C. for a school trip, a day of museums, history, and a brief escape from their routine. The city buzzed outside as loaded into the car, clicks punctuating their conversation. She tried to keep the chatter light, avoiding anything that might hint at the tension bubbling beneath the surface. Driving to the airport felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. Traveling always brought a sense of anticipation, a reminder of past missions, past lives. She had flown countless sorties in an F-22, navigating hostile skis with precision, but today her task was different: keep her son entertained, calm, and safe on a commercial flight. The parallel wasn't lost on her. Life had become a different kind of mission, one that demanded patience, strategy, and vigilance, just in a different arena. She tightened her grip on the steering wheel, thinking about boarding procedures, security lines, and the crowd of passengers, many of whom would see her as just another mom. At the airport, the familiar rush of announcements, rolling suitcases, and hurried travelers greeted them. Held hand tightly as they made their way to security, checking her boarding pass and ID with practiced efficiency. The routine felt comforting, grounding, yet a small part of her remained alert, scanning the crowd, noting faces, posture, and subtle movements, a habit she had never truly abandoned. She caught sight of 2 men in pilot jackets, moving with quiet confidence and scanning the terminal. Something in their demeanor sparked a flicker of recognition she couldn't immediately place. For a moment, she pushed it aside. Today was about the school trip and normalcy. Boarding began and guided down the aisle to seat 12F by the window. She smiled at the flight attendants, nodded politely to nearby passengers, and settled into his seat, helping him buckle in. "Window or aisle?" she asked lightly. Eyes sparkled with excitement. "Window, Mom, I want to see everything from up there," chuckled, adjusting the small blanket around him. She glanced out the window herself, watching the tarmac bustle with activity, luggage being loaded, planes taxiing, pilots conducting final checks. A sense of anticipation surged through her chest. Life was ordinary, yet her instincts, old, sharp, and unyielding, kept her alert. As the plane's engines roared to life and the cabin prepared for takeoff, took a final breath, grounding herself. Her hand found, and she squeezed gently. To the casual observer, she was simply a mom on a plane, but somewhere deep within, a part of her remembered speed, danger, and the adrenaline of flight. The ordinary world of boarding, seats, and air travel collided with the extraordinary life she had once led. A life that might, she didn't yet know, come rushing back with a familiar voice calling her name. The plane's engines hummed steadily as Dawson settled into seat 12F, pressed against her side, eyes wide with curiosity and excitement. The cabin smelled faintly of coffee and plastic, passengers shuffling with restless energy. Adjusted one last time, smoothing the straps and leaning down to whisper, "Remember to stay in your seat until the sign goes off, okay?" He nodded, still marveling at the view from the window. Outside, the morning sun painted the tarmac with gold and amber hues, a mundane beauty that contrasted with the strange tension quietly building inside her. As the plane taxied toward the runway, a ripple of anxiety passed through the cabin. A few passengers murmured uneasily, gripping armrests, scanning their surroundings. Turbulence rarely struck this early, yet a slight shake rattled the aisle. Instincts flared automatically, honed from years of high-stakes missions in the skis. She grasped his hand gently, calm and firm. "It's just a little bump, buddy, nothing to worry about." She smiled, masking the flicker of alertness she couldn't completely suppress. Her eyes swept the cabin like a pilot scanning a horizon. Patterns, posture, tiny inconsistencies. Every muscle, every thought prepared for the unexpected. Her gaze briefly caught two men walking down the aisle. Their jackets identified them as pilots, but there was something more in their presence. A quiet confidence, subtle gestures, and eyes scanning not just the passengers but the cabin with a practiced intensity. Felt a strange, fleeting recognition, a spark buried deep beneath years of civilian life. She blinked, forcing her attention back to who was craning his neck to watch luggage carts pass through the windows. Still, her mind ticked over in milliseconds, cataloging every detail. The way the men moved, the slight nod exchanged between them, the way they seemed to notice her seat specifically. The sign dinged off and passengers began to shift, some stretching, some chatting. Held's hand, her own pulse quickening slightly. She couldn't place the feeling exactly, but it was familiar, an echo of adrenaline from a life she hadn't touched in years. Her past, neatly packed away behind the quiet routines of motherhood and civilian work, whispered in faint echoes, the hum of engines, the smell of aviation fuel, the feeling of precision and control. She sighed, pushing the thought aside. Today was about the school trip and keeping life as ordinary as possible. Yet the strange sense of recognition persisted. The taller of the two pilots leaned subtly toward his companion, speaking in a low, hushed tone. Their conversation was masked by the cabin noise, but their eyes met hers briefly, an almost imperceptible acknowledgement. Something in their gaze stirred memories she had buried. The roar of supersonic engines, split-second decisions, tactical maneuvers, life-and-death calculations. Her chest tightened, a strange mix of nostalgia and tension. His grip on his hand grew firmer, her body responding to instincts long dormant. The ordinary world of coffee cups, rolling suitcases, and murmuring passengers faded. Something significant was unfolding, just beyond her immediate perception. A sudden jolt ran through the plane. Instinctively leaned slightly forward, guiding against the seat, whispering reassurances. Other passengers glanced nervously around, but's calm demeanor spread a subtle sense of stability. She realized she wasn't just comforting her son, she was assessing, calculating, observing, just as she had when piloting an F-22 years ago. Every small motion mattered. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from the recognition that her instincts were waking, responding to stimuli her mind had cataloged from years of high-altitude vigilance. The two pilots walked past her row, their presence commanding attention without effort. The taller one's eyes briefly locked on hers, a spark of familiarity unmistakable. Something in the brief glance triggered a cascade of memories she hadn't allowed herself to access in years. A mission code, a distant hangar lit by floodlights. Her pulse quickened, awareness sharpening. Realized that whatever this encounter was, it wasn't random. Her ordinary life and her extraordinary past were on a collision course, and the plane's gentle turbulence felt like the calm before a storm she hadn't yet dared to imagine. fidgeted, asking about the view outside, smiled, but her mind remained alert. She could sense, with a precision that had been ingrained in her through years of service, that today would not remain ordinary for long. A subtle nod passed between the pilots once more, their eyes flicking toward her seat. The spark of recognition deepened. Exhaled slowly, her thoughts aligning. Ordinary flight, ordinary day, but not for her. She was being noticed, identified, and perhaps called upon once again. Her life, quiet and controlled, was about to intersect with the extraordinary in ways she could neither anticipate nor ignore. Dawson felt a tightening in her chest as the taller pilot approached her row. Her instincts, long dormant, flared to life with the precision of a reflex honed over years of high-stakes missions. He leaned slightly, voice low yet confident, just audible over the hum of the cabin. "Viper 1?" he asked, the single phrase landing like a thunderclap. Froze, her fork paused midair, her mind jolting as memories surged. The her transported her back to distant air bases, stealth missions over hostile territory, and a life she had carefully locked away behind the ordinary routines of motherhood. Squirmed beside her, sensing the sudden tension. "Mom?" he asked, voice small and uncertain. Gaze flicked to him, forcing a calm smile. "It's okay, buddy," she whispered, though her heart raced. The pilot's presence, though calm, radiated authority and recognition. His own eyes widened as realization struck. The man standing before her wasn't just any pilot. He was someone who had flown alongside her, trusted her with missions few could imagine, relied on her judgment at the very edge of danger. Her mind raced, piecing together the fragments of a past she had thought safely sealed. The aircraft hangars, the roar of F-22 engines, the smell of jet fuel mixing with the adrenaline of mission briefings, all flashed in vivid clarity. She remembered tactical codes, maneuvers executed at impossible speeds, and moments when a split-second decision had meant life or death. The pilot's eyes, sharp and familiar, carried a recognition that no civilian could imitate. For a heartbeat, the mundane plane cabin transformed in her mind into the cockpit of an F-22, the metal and wind of the sky wrapping around her like a second skin. The pilot leaned a fraction closer, a subtle smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Dawson," he said softly, almost reverently. Her lips parted, a mix of shock, disbelief, and an undeniable thrill rising in her chest. It was real. The past she had tried to leave behind was here, alive, calling her back. Her instincts screamed simultaneously: protect, assess, engage. She realized that her life, once split neatly between the ordinary and the extraordinary, was about to blur in ways she hadn't anticipated. Small hand gripped hers tightly, looked down at him, masking the surge of adrenaline and nostalgia. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yes, honey," she replied smoothly, though her mind whirled. To the passengers around them it seemed a casual interaction, but knew better. Every flicker of recognition, every subtle gesture from the pilots was loaded with meaning. Something significant was unfolding, something beyond the ordinary flight, beyond her everyday life as a single mother. The second pilot, slightly shorter but equally commanding, stepped closer, his eyes scanning with professional focus. "We weren't expecting to see you here," he said quietly, a hint of humor in his tone. Lips pressed together, the years of civilian anonymity clashing with the reality of being recognized. Her mind flashed back to her final mission, the one she had left behind, with a mixture of relief and regret. She had walked away from the Air Force to raise, never imagining that one day, a routine flight would reignite the extraordinary. The cabin noise faded from her awareness. She could hear only the subtle hum of engines, the faint rustle of passengers adjusting in their seats, and the quiet, measured tone of the pilots. Each word carried weight, each glance was loaded with unspoken history. His pulse quickened, muscles tensing. The life she had built, the careful balance of motherhood, work, and normalcy, teetered on the edge of disruption. Yet underneath the uncertainty, a spark of exhilaration ignited. She was being called back to the arena where she had excelled, where instincts and skill had been her only allies. A flashback seized her for a moment. The cockpit lights of a hangar at dawn, her hands steady on the controls of an F-22, the roar of the engines reverberating in her chest. She remembered the nickname, Viper 1, and how it had meant respect, trust, and leadership. And now, hearing it again from the pilot's lips, she felt a surge of pride intertwined with disbelief. The ordinary flight, the ordinary day, had been shattered by the recognition of her true identity, and with it, the possibility that her past might be urgently needed once more. The taller pilot extended a hand, a gesture both casual and loaded with history. "It's been a long time," he said softly. Throat tightened. She knew that words couldn't capture the flood of memory, emotion, and latent readiness coursing through her. For the first time in years, she felt the duality of her life collide. The devoted mother in 12F and the legendary F-22 pilot known as Viper 1. And she understood with unspoken certainty that ordinary life was about to give way to the extraordinary once again. Dawson's mind raced as the two pilots guided her quietly down the plane aisle, keeping their voices low. "Sit tight for a moment," the taller one murmured, glancing around to ensure no curious ears could overhear. The ordinary hum of the cabin faded as adrenaline coursed through. Every muscle, every instinct honed over years of F-22 sorties, woke in an instant. She felt the familiar clarity, split-second decisions, anticipating outcomes, controlling variables. It had been years since she'd flown in a fighter jet, but the memories surged back with a vividness that startled her. Once they reached a waiting vehicle outside the terminal's heart pounded. The city noises seemed distant, inconsequential, replaced by a heightened awareness of the men guiding her. She tucked safely in a seat with a flight attendant escort, assuring him with a smile that he'd be back in her arms soon. The thought of leaving him, even briefly, tugged at her heart. She had built her life around him, woven every decision into the fabric of his safety and happiness. And yet, the urgency in the pilot's eyes told her this was not ordinary. The ride to a discreet military facility was quiet, tension heavy but controlled. His mind flickered between disbelief and preparation. Her fingers absent-mindedly traced patterns along the seams of her jacket as she replayed flashes of cockpit training, tactical briefings, and emergency protocols. Her identity as Viper 1 wasn't just a title, it was a responsibility she had left behind reluctantly. The thought that she might be needed again brought a mixture of pride and anxiety. Could she still perform at the level expected of her? Could she face danger after years in a civilian life? At the facility was led into a secure briefing room, walls lined with screens and maps of aerial routes. The gravity of the situation became clear as the second pilot, shorter, sharp-eyed, stepped forward. He said, voice low but firm, "We've identified a potential threat in restricted airspace. Intelligence suggests it could escalate quickly. Your experience with F-22 operations, evasive maneuvers, and rapid tactical assessment is essential." His pulse quickened. This wasn't a simulation or a drill. It was real, urgent, and required her unique skill set. Swallowed hard, the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. Memories of high-stakes missions flooded back, the roar of engines over desert landscapes, split-second tactical decisions, and moments when failure wasn't an option. She had left this life for motherhood, choosing stability over adrenaline, ordinary routines over the extraordinary. Yet here she was, being called back, not for recognition, but because her expertise was unmatched. The realization both thrilled and frightened her. She was a mother and a civilian, but the mission demanded the fighter pilot she once was. Leaned over the briefing table, absorbing maps, satellite images, and radar readings. The threat was complex, moving fast and unpredictable. Her mind instinctively began plotting contingencies, running calculations for every possible maneuver. The pilots watched silently, confident she could handle it. It was a test and a trust exercise. She hadn't flown combat sorties in years, yet every instinct, every reflex resurfaced effortlessly. The realization hit her. Despite time and distance from her previous life, she had never truly left it. Her heart tugged toward the child she had nurtured and protected, who would never fully understand the duality of her existence. Yet she knew that hesitation could cost more than herself. It could cost lives. exhaled slowly, centering herself. Duty, courage, and experience coalesced. She was ready. The ordinary life of motherhood and office routines would temporarily pause. The extraordinary responsibilities of Viper 1 would dominate the next hours. She glanced at the pilots, nodding slightly. Without words, she communicated readiness. As suited up in the flight gear provided, the hum of adrenaline mixed with nostalgia. She tightened straps, checked instruments, and adjusted gloves with precision. The F-22 cockpit was not yet under her hands, but the ritual of preparation reawakened a familiar confidence. The pilots briefed her on the flight plan, the rules of engagement and contingencies, their voices crisp and professional. Absorbed every detail, her mind already anticipating maneuvers, assessing risks, calculating split-second options. The past and present fused seamlessly. She was a mother, yes, but she was also Viper 1, ready to step into the skis once more. With one last glance at the facility entrance, whispered under her breath, "Let's do this." Her hands tightened, heart pounding, and a quiet determination settled over her. The mission awaited, urgent and dangerous, but for the first time in years, she felt alive in ways she hadn't felt since leaving the Air Force. The ordinary world of 12F, of school trips and mundane routines, was fading. Dawson, mother and hero, was preparing to reclaim her skis. Dawson sat in a small briefing room, her flight suit crisp and unfamiliar, yet strangely comfortable. Her mind flickered between two worlds, the bustling, ordinary life with and the high-stakes skis she had once dominated. The pilot stood beside her, calm and authoritative, outlining contingencies, threat levels, and mission objectives. His heart raced, not just from adrenaline but from the weight of the choice she had to make. Leaving, even for a few hours, felt impossible. Yet her instincts reminded her. Her skill set, honed in life-or-death scenarios, was essential now. Lives could depend on her. She pictured small, worried face, the way he had waved from the terminal. He didn't fully understand the significance of her past, the risks she would face, or the urgency behind the pilot's recognition. The thought of leaving him, even briefly, clawed at her. But she also knew that this mission wasn't just about her. It was about protecting countless lives from a potential airborne threat. Sacrifice was never easy, and today's choices bore consequences she could not ignore. Inhaled deeply, centering herself. The briefing screens glowed with strategic information, radar sweeps, aerial pathways, potential intercept points. Every decision demanded clarity, speed, and precision. Instincts surged, each calculation aligning with years of training. Yet beneath the professional rigor, her heart ached. She would miss dinner with tonight, the bedtime story she had promised, the comfort of his laughter. Duty called her beyond the ordinary, forcing her to balance maternal instinct against responsibility, to embrace risk she hadn't faced in years. She reminded herself that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was action in spite of it. A short, bittersweet video call reassured her. Appeared on the small screen, his bright eyes searching for reassurance. "Mom, be careful," he said earnestly, his throat tightened. "I will, my brave boy," she replied, masking the whirlwind of emotion behind a calm smile. Seeing him, even briefly, sharpened her resolve. Protecting him meant acting decisively now. Hesitation could jeopardize the mission, and in her world the mission always demanded complete commitment. She squeezed the tablet, imprinting his face in her memory, a reminder of why she had to succeed. The pilot spoke quietly, outlining the aircraft assignment and flight plan. Absorbed every detail, her mind already mapping potential evasive maneuvers and response options. Muscle memory resurfaced, the feel of flight controls under her hands, the hum of engines at full power, the delicate balance of maneuvering at supersonic speeds. Every instinct she had cultivated during her Air Force career returned, blending seamlessly with the maternal focus that had guided her through quieter, safer years. Today, both halves of her life, the ordinary and extraordinary, merged into a single mission. Walked toward the aircraft bay, every step deliberate, her mind a mixture of adrenaline, nostalgia, and maternal concern. She suited up fully, checking helmet, gloves, and harness with meticulous precision. The pilots gave nods of quiet acknowledgement, They trusted her skill as they always had. This trust grounded her, but the emotional cost was clear. She was leaving behind not just a son, but a carefully constructed life, however temporary. For the first time in years, recognized that heroism demanded sacrifice, personal, emotional, and immediate. As the engines of the F-22 roared to life, climbed into the cockpit, the familiar smell of aviation fuel and metal flooding her senses. She adjusted controls, feeling the smooth alignment of instruments beneath her fingertips. Every thought, every nerve was alive. The ordinary world of 12F and quiet Dayton mornings seemed distant, replaced by the precise, high-stakes demands of aerial command. She glanced once more at the tablet showing small face and whispered under her breath, "I'll be back, my brave boy. Stay safe." It was a promise she intended to keep, no matter the danger. The canopy closed, locking her in, and felt a surge of clarity. She was a mother, yes, but she was also Viper 1, a pilot whose instincts had been tested at extremes. Choices and sacrifices were inevitable in her dual existence, but she accepted them fully. The ordinary life of routines, lunches, and school projects had prepared her for patience. The extraordinary life of combat had prepared her for action. Now they converged. With engines roaring, systems ready, and pilots aligned beside her, embraced her mission. The skis awaited, and with them, both risk and redemption. Dawson's hands gripped the flight controls of the F-22, the metal and instrumentation familiar beneath her fingertips. The engines roared like wild beasts awakened, a vibration that reverberated through her chest, matching the surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins. Outside, the runway blurred as the jet accelerated into the sky, ascending with breathtaking speed. Every instinct returned instantly, scanning radar, monitoring altitude, adjusting maneuvers. But beneath the professional focus, her thoughts returned to her small son, waiting innocently at the base, unaware of the magnitude of the mission she had accepted. Her mind flickered to their brief video call moments before takeoff. Wide eyes, filled with a mixture of pride and fear, had haunted her. "Mom, be careful," he had whispered, tiny fingers pressed against the tablet screen. His chest tightened. "I will, my brave boy," she had replied, concealing the rush of emotion threatening to overwhelm her. Now, as the city receded beneath a sea of clouds, she felt the tension of dual lives pressing in. Mother and fighter pilot, protector of one life and potentially hundreds. The flight plan was intricate, demanding absolute precision. Intelligence reports indicated a potential threat approaching restricted U.S. airspace. His heart pounded, not just from anticipation but from the knowledge that failure could have catastrophic consequences. She adjusted her helmet, checking HUD readouts, radar sweeps, and wind vectors. Every system demanded attention. Every calculation could mean success or disaster. She was not merely returning to the skis. She was stepping into a crucible that tested skill, courage, and decisiveness, all while holding the love for her son tightly in her mind. The two pilots flanking her, seasoned and sharp, monitored every movement. Their presence was a silent reassurance. Responded with professional precision, executing maneuvers from years of training, sharp banking turns, altitude adjustments, intercept positioning. Muscle memory dominated, every movement instinctive. Yet behind the calculated motions, her heart battled emotion. Thoughts of breakfast requests, bedtime stories, and laughter pulled at her consciousness. She realized acutely that balancing duty and love demanded constant mental agility, a harmony of focus and feeling she had never truly mastered. As the F-22 sliced through the clouds, spotted the approaching anomaly on her HUD. Her training clicked into overdrive. Scanning patterns, calculating trajectories, and planning intercepts became second nature. Her hands moved with confidence, executing precise commands, coordinating with the other pilots via secure communications. The mission's intensity tested her skill and nerves. But alongside the tactical thinking, a personal layer persisted. She was acutely aware that every success here was also a safeguard for her son's future, for the ordinary life waiting for her on the ground. Suddenly, a radar ping signaled movement in the threat's path. Heart surged. This was the test she had trained for, the exact scenario where split-second decisions defined outcomes. She adjusted course, executed evasive maneuvers, and communicated strategies with the team. Each command balanced efficiency with care, precision with anticipation. As she flew, she imagined watching her from the ground, a source of grounding motivation. The duality of her life, the emotional pull of motherhood and the professional demand of the mission, drove her forward, forcing clarity even under pressure. Hours felt like minutes as the operation continued. Focus never wavered, yet every glance at her instruments carried the weight of responsibility. The ordinary routines of life, school projects, soccer games, bedtime prayers, flashed through her mind, providing a strange source of strength. They reminded her of why she was here, why sacrifice was necessary, and why excellence mattered. Courage, she realized, wasn't just about survival. It was about protection, commitment, and prioritizing the lives of those who could not defend themselves. By the time the F-22 team reached the threat's trajectory, was fully immersed in the mission, her mind a seamless blend of instinct, training, and emotional resolve. The anomaly adjusted course unexpectedly, forcing rapid recalculations. She responded with precision, coordinating with her fellow pilots, predicting moves, countering risks. Success was within reach, but tension remained high. His heart swelled with a mixture of fear, determination, and love, a delicate balance she had never known to sustain, now tested to its limits. She was flying high, but it was not just the jet soaring. It was the convergence of her past and present, her duty and her heart. Dawson's eyes scanned the horizon, the HUD of her F-22 illuminating trajectories and radar pings. The anomaly was moving faster than intelligence had predicted, a potential threat weaving through airspace with deadly precision. Her instincts, sharpened by years of training and experience, activated instantly. Muscle memory guided her hands across the controls, each adjustment precise, deliberate. She felt the familiar rush of adrenaline, the exhilaration of high-speed flight, the razor-edge tension of life-or-death maneuvers. For a brief moment, all doubts vanished. Was no longer just a mother or a civilian. She was Viper One, in her element at the apex of aerial combat. The formation of F-22s she now led cut through the clouds with immaculate synchronization. Pilots flanked her on either side, relying on her judgment, her calculations, her split-second decision-making. His mind worked faster than thought, predicting the threat's evasive moves, countering with aggressive but calculated maneuvers. Banking sharply, she avoided simulated intercepts while maintaining radar lock. The speed, precision, and intensity of the operation left no room for error. Each maneuver tested her skills, memory, and composure. Every heartbeat counted, every choice bore consequence. Failure was not an option, yet balanced courage with caution, instinct with strategy. Her mind flickered to for just a fraction of a second. The image grounded her, providing clarity rather than distraction. She imagined his wide-eyed admiration, his faith in her even from miles below. Protecting him and countless others fueled her resolve. The mission was no longer abstract. It carried the weight of lives dependent on her skill. Executed a vertical climb, pulling her jet into a tight loop, adjusting throttle and control surfaces to counter wind turbulence. Her HUD beeped with incoming threats, each requiring immediate analysis. With calm precision, she prioritized, neutralized, and redirected. The F-22 responded seamlessly, an extension of her trained reflexes. Suddenly, the threat executed an unexpected maneuver, forcing to adapt instantly. Her hands moved instinctively, recalculating angles, predicting movement, and coordinating intercepts with the team via encrypted communication channels. Adjust bearing 20 degrees left. Cut throttle to 90%. Prepare for intercept, she commanded, her voice steady yet firm. The other pilots responded with efficiency, trusting her leadership implicitly. Felt a thrill she hadn't experienced in years, the pure, unfiltered exhilaration of mastery under pressure, where every second demanded her absolute focus. The anomaly's path shifted again, diving toward restricted airspace. Anticipated the vector, calculating potential outcomes at supersonic speeds. She executed a rapid bank, countering the threat while keeping altitude safe. The HUD displayed a green lock. Success was imminent but precarious. One miscalculation could have catastrophic consequences. Yet's confidence was unshakable, honed through countless missions where precision and courage were inseparable. She felt the familiar rhythm of flight: control, calculation, adaptation. The F-22 responded like a living extension of her body, fluid and exact. As the team approached the final intercept point, coordinated a complex aerial pattern, drawing the threat into a controlled zone for containment. The maneuver demanded perfect timing, flawless communication, and split-second judgment. Her heart raced, yet she remained calm, each decision deliberate. She could feel the synergy with her fellow pilots: silent communication, mutual trust, and respect forged through shared experience. Together, they executed the intercept flawlessly. The threat neutralized, exhaled subtly, though vigilance remained. Mission success wasn't just about victory. It was about responsibility, precision, and the countless lives now safeguarded. Even as adrenaline faded, his mind remained sharp. Systems checks, post-intercept maneuvers, and formation integrity required continued attention. Her HUD cleared, indicators returning to baseline. She felt a surge of pride, knowing her training, experience, and instincts had converged to protect lives and avert disaster. The F-22 hummed beneath her, engines cooling, systems stabilizing. Allowed herself a small, private smile. She had returned to the skis, embraced danger, and performed at the highest level. Viper 1 had answered the call, and in doing so, had reminded herself of the strength and courage that had never truly left her. As she leveled off and prepared for the return flight, the pilots flanking her nodded subtly, a silent acknowledgement of her skill and leadership. Mind, though exhilarated, already shifted toward what awaited below: her ordinary life, the warmth of home. The duality of her existence, mother and elite pilot, remained, but for this moment, mastery, courage, and the thrill of the skis defined her. Viper 1 had returned, and the mission had been executed with flawless precision, a testament to skill, resolve, and heart. Dawson guided the F-22 back toward base, her hands steady, heart still racing from the mission. The sky, now a calm expanse of blue, seemed almost ordinary, a stark contrast to the intensity of the past hours. Yet for the exhilaration of success mingled with the pull of home. Her mind flickered to, imagining him waiting, small and anxious, hopping to see his mother return safe. The duality of her life, mother and elite pilot, settled into a temporary balance as she began the descent, engines humming like a heartbeat in perfect rhythm. The pilots flanking her mirrored her careful precision. No words were necessary. Their movements, subtle communications, and glances conveyed trust and acknowledgement, had led, calculated, and executed the mission flawlessly. Every maneuver, every decision had been precise. The threat had been neutralized without incident, the mission objectives completed. She allowed herself a brief smile under her helmet, a rare release of tension. But the personal stakes were far from over. There awaited the world she had fought to protect, and the sun who grounded her in the ordinary joys of life. As the landing gear extended, thoughts sharpened. Smooth landing protocols, throttle adjustments, and approach angles demanded focus. Muscle memory guided her effortlessly. Yet beneath the professional veneer, her heart raced with anticipation. Soon, she would step from the cockpit into a world where nothing was as extraordinary as the skis she had just dominated, but everything was profoundly meaningful. Embrace, the warmth of home, the simplicity of ordinary life called to her in ways she hadn't realized she'd missed. The F-22 touched down gracefully, brakes engaging with a hiss of controlled force. Taxied to the hangar, coordinating final system checks while maintaining situational awareness. The other pilots executed synchronized landings nearby, their movements efficient and precise. For them, the operation was routine, yet felt the weight of triumph, relief, and lingering adrenaline. The mission had demanded every ounce of skill and mental acuity she possessed, but she had emerged unscathed and victorious. It was a rare fusion of duty, courage, and instinct, each reinforced by experience and the stakes that mattered most. Once the jets were secured, removed her helmet and flight gloves, stepping out of the cockpit with a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The sun had dipped lower in the sky, bathing the facility in golden light. A small crowd gathered at a distance, military personnel giving nods of respect. Yet's focus was elsewhere. Across the tarmac, ran toward her, tiny arms flailing, eyes wide with relief and joy. Time seemed to slow as she dropped her gear and knelt to catch him, wrapping him in a warm embrace. "Mom!" he shouted, his voice filled with wonder and love. Tears pricked eyes as she held him close, breathing in the familiar scent of home and childhood innocence. "I'm here, my brave boy," she whispered, pressing a kiss to his forehead. The ordinary world of school projects, bedtime stories, and quiet dinners enveloped her once more, grounding her after hours of extraordinary intensity. For a moment, nothing mattered but the soft pulse of life in her son's laughter, the comfort of family, and the knowledge that she had succeeded in both realms. She was mother and hero, and both roles harmonized in this singular, beautiful moment. The pilots approached quietly, giving her a nod and a subtle smile, their eyes communicating respect and acknowledgement without words. Returned the gesture, a silent gratitude passing between them. They had witnessed her brilliance and resilience in the skis, and now she returned not only as a competent leader, but as a woman who had navigated the impossible duality of duty and personal sacrifice. Understood deeply that her life's extraordinary moments were intertwined with the ordinary joys she had fought so hard to protect. Still clinging to her, asked a flurry of questions about the planes, the maneuvers, and the mission. Chuckled softly, weaving stories suitable for his young mind, balancing honesty with reassurance. She realized that heroism was not always about recognition, accolades, or medals. It was about courage, responsibility, and love. Today, she had flown beyond limits, neutralized danger, and returned to the embrace of the one life that mattered most. Viper 1 had soared, and now Dawson, mother and hero, had returned home. As they walked toward the car, holding her hand tightly, felt the profound satisfaction of completion. The sky had tested her, the mission demanded her, but the world below offered her sanctuary, love, and normalcy. She glanced back at the hangar one last time, a small smile tugging at her lips. The extraordinary had met the ordinary, and she had mastered both. Dawson, once a single mom in seat 12F, now carried the quiet pride of a hero who had soared and returned safely, heart and duty intact.